Throughout the past 110 years, the face of building materials has continued to evolve. We're here for a lifetime of living. This is Brickworks. More than brick, and more than just building products, we are a foundation for today's lifestyle and a leader for today's style. We manufacture a wide range of building products like no other. Local and international innovation, sourced from around the world to exceed customer expectations. Distinctive and luxurious products, beautiful products that stand the test of time. Building inspiration and innovation with an unmatched standing of style. This is Brickworks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's event. My name's Brett Ward. I'm the General Manager of International Marketing for Brickworks Building Products. And whether you're joining us here in Sydney, anywhere across Australia or internationally, thank you for being with us this evening. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all gathered and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Tonight is the second instalment of our inDETAIL speaker series, where we invite industry professionals to connect over an evening of insightful conversation. I'd like to extend a very big thank you and warm welcome to tonight's guest presenter, Mr. Fabrizio Barozzi of Barozzi Veiga from Barcelona in Spain. We're delighted, Fabrizio, that you've been able to join us as our first international speaker, and we look forward to your presentation this evening. I'm also pleased to once again welcome architect, writer and educator, Mr. Stephen Varady, who will formally introduce Fabrizio and host a Q&A session at the conclusion of tonight's presentation. Now tonight you'll also have the opportunity to submit questions for Fabrizio during his presentation via the email address events@brickworks.com.au. Now this email address will appear on your screen for an extended period of time, but please make sure if you have any questions to submit, you submit them by 7:20 p.m. And finally, on Thursday the 29th of October, Brickworks is excited to be unveiling over 100 new products via a virtual product launch. This not to be missed event will provide you with an exciting first look at our latest and most innovative products from across our bricks, roofing and masonry brands. We hope that you'll be able to join us for this exciting event. Here is a small sneak peek.
Beautiful products, bold innovation. Brickworks B20, Thursday, October 29, 2020.
Fabrizio Barozzi for tonight's inDETAIL speaker event. Please enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brett, and thank you to Brickworks once again for their ongoing support of great architecture. I'm Sydney-based architect Stephen Varady, and I've been curator of architectural speakers for Brickworks since 2015. The current state of the world has required some reformatting, and I'm pleased to be involved in this revised version of the Brickworks speaker series with tonight's inDETAIL international speaker, Fabrizio Barozzi. In 2017, I travelled to Spain. While in Barcelona, I contacted Fabrizio, hoping to invite him to Australia for our speaker series that year. Fabrizio generously invited me to his studio on a Saturday and spent quite some time showing me projects from past, present and future, even giving me a wonderful publication of their work. The work was rigorous, beautiful and extremely well considered in form, materiality and detail. Unfortunately, due to an almost expired passport, Fabrizio never made it to Australia. So when Brickworks decided to reinvent the series due to our 2020 COVID travel restrictions, Fabrizio was the first architect I contacted. Barozzi Veiga described their work as sentimental monumentality. While the works establish specific relationships to surrounding contexts, their architecture aspires to confer dignity, identity, and a sense of belonging upon places of civic community life in a way that is not time-specific, attempting to establish a temporal link between past, present and future. Their buildings could be in many places, in many times, an architecture that is simultaneously specific and autonomous, intimate and monumental, capable of preserving the richness and singularity of each place while never failing to discover the unexpected landscapes that each hides. Fabrizio Barozzi studied architecture in Venice, Seville and Paris, founding Barozzi Veiga with Albert Veiga in 2004. Since 2007, he has been a professor in architecture in Barcelona, Venice and at MIT in the USA. In 2020, he is the Gensler Visiting Critic at Cornell University in the USA. Barozzi Veiga have completed built works in Spain, Poland, Italy and Switzerland. In a few months, they will inaugurate 2 more buildings, part of the new design district in London. The selection of their drawings and models is now part of the permanent collection of the Centre Pompidou in Paris, and they were exhibited in the Arsenale during the 2016 Venice Architecture Biennale. In 2019, they were selected to design a major transformation of the Art Institute of Chicago, and in 2020, they were selected to build the new Ulite Arts Foundation campus in Miami. I believe you will be truly impressed and spirited away to other lands during this presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 2020 Brickworks inDETAIL international speaker, Fabrizio Barozzi. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much to Brickworks for this invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to present our work. We tried to set up during the last years a presentation in Australia, but for different reasons wasn't possible. So finally this year we have been able to organize a presentation. So I'm really happy with this opportunity. And this is my first, really my first presentation in Australia. So so for the reason, what I will try to do today is just to give you a general overview of to our work. Maybe our whole work here in Europe is more well known, and maybe for you in Australia is not so. So you didn't see our project. So during this presentation, we tried to to pass through several important projects that we have made since we started the office, and finalizing the presentation with the most recent project. So we started our office in 2004 here in Barcelona, Alberto and me, and since the beginning essentially we participate in competition, national, international competition, and in this way we step by step we grow up and we found our first job. This drawing is a drawing we made for the very first project we did at the office. It was a small project for a cultural center and social housing in a small town in south of Spain. The project is there. Essentially what it tried to find a way to integrate a new architecture into a very sensible and delicate historical context. In a way, this project marked our attitude towards architecture. Since the beginning, we tried to work with what we found. We tried to work with the specific condition of a place, with and establish an intimate relationship with the context, physical context, imaginary context, or with the different realities that exist in a place. No? So this idea to work with the specificity as mark all our first career here. Here's another project in Germany that is intended an extension of an historical castle, trying to establish certain analogy, certain formal analogy with the pre-existing building. Or again, in another project in China for us, a private villa in which the idea of the roof tried to work with some kind the identitary character of a certain traditional architecture. In a way, our work is based in this idea to work with what we found, with this idea of specificity, with the specificity of the plate, but at the same time we are conscious at the same time that an architecture is an autonomous object. No? So at the end our project is based in a dichotomy. For one side we're trying to find this intimate and sensible relationship with the specificity for the place, but for the other hand we try to give a certain formal autonomy to the building. And exactly in this dichotomy, in this above this paradox is where our work is placed. These are other very early projects, very old projects we did in Italy, for example. And step by step we elaborate a little bit more in deep this idea that is quite at the base of our work, and step by step we try to radicalize a little bit this idea. Also, our project is another project for a small museum in north of Spain. The architecture step by step becomes more pure, more basic, almost primitive in a certain way, no? So there has been a process of reduction of the formal element that we use in order to generate architecture, no? Working just with basic material, light, try to create kind of emotional space. And this is another project a little bit more recent than the other one, in which the architecture arrived to be composed by just a shell, no? 4 pavilions that define a space, define some kind of microcosm that is able to create some kind of an intimate relationship with the landscape in this way, with nature, but at the same time it's something that to resonate with certain archetype in a way, no? So this project it's really about reduction of the compositive element, working with certain idea of archetype, and try to work with, as I said before, with the physical and material specific condition of a context. This is another image of this project. After this several projects we made in the very first year, we had during the opportunity to build our first 2 projects in Spain, and these mark an important period of our office. So we started for the first time to have the opportunity to build and discover how to build and how things. The first project we built was a theater, a congress center, really, in south of Spain. Essentially, the project tried to clarify and create an ending of this bay, no, in a urban context that was quite fragmented. And essentially the project worked with the geography. From one side, try to respond to this very moved and intricate geography, try to open the view towards the bay. From the other side, from the back side, it tried to clarify the urban alignment. This form, quite simple, synthetic, was carved essentially through a public loop that go inside the building and permit the visitor to move around freely around the entire building. This is another, so the reflection about the public space, the reflection about how the people use the building mark another important condition for all our projects. I can say that our architecture are modeled by the public space. The first idea of a project is always about how to generate city, how to conform new possibilities for a public space, and the architecture work as a frame to conform this kind of new urban condition. Here, for example, this huge long ramp and stairs are the urban element able to connect the object through its contextual condition, and it marks the beginning of a promenade, a public promenade that go inside of the building. The interior, the foyer was considered a covered plaza open to the sea, from where other connection move in the upper level. All our project has this plan are trying to be very simple, very synthetic. They try to solve a complex program through a very simple form. Here, the plan show very clearly this duality that exists in the project. From one side, how the project is facing the geography, the sea, and the other side, how the building conform the new alignment for the city. No? With just these two elements, all the project in a way is solved. Interior, there was a small theater that is present in this image. More or less in the same year, in fact, we finalized this project at the same period of the previous one. We made a project for a small, let's call it office building that control a quality of a wine in a small town in the north of Madrid. And this project has been really important in our career. Because probably is the project that that explain in the best way our attitude toward architecture. So in this image you can see how this vertical element, this kind of tower that remit to this tower that are present in this very flat natural landscape in the north, in the central Spain. Essentially, this element mark a limit to the urban facing the nature. No? As you see in the drawing, the project sits exactly in the limit of this small town. No? And this double condition, no, to be part of the city and to be part of the natural landscape mark the specificity of the project. No? And this geographical condition in a way shaped the project. From one side, the building complete an existing building, an historical building. From the other side, so in a very sensible way, no, and step by step, it brings its own autonomy with this vertical archetype element that face the landscape. So it is important to notice that also above the building here there is a small plaza. No? So this is a private building, but again the effort, all the project is conformed by the effort to create new public space. No? And this image it represents is a kind of manifesto in a way, no? Because it's something that explains that the project is really deeply linked with the specificity of this space, but at the same time it's trying to find its own independent. It tries to be independent and autonomous, and discovering new possible scenario for this context, and at the same time this strategy permit to conform a new part of a civic condition, creating this urban public area on the roof. No? So the project here show how is this duplicity conform the plan. There are several fragments that complete the existing, that is in a way contextually with what we have found there, and then the tower that mark the limits of the project and the public space inside. You know? So, and this is another view of the of the roof, in which, as I told you before, the architecture is just the frame of a new public space. The architecture is modeled by the thinking about the urban life in a way. No? And this condition, you can find this kind of reflection not only in this project here, but also in all our projects. Then there are these, as similar to the very first image that I presented you, there are these effort in order to integrate a new contemporary architecture into an historical condition, no? Discovering new scenario, new possible way of new possible architecture. After these two first projects that has been quite important for our career, we started to have to work around Europe, especially in Poland, and then the later year in Switzerland. And a project, the very first important project we made internationally was Philharmony in a city called Szczecin in the north of Poland, very close to Berlin. The new Philharmony sits in the same site of an old Philharmony that was destroyed during the Second World War. And essentially, again, the architecture tried to establish some kind of assonance or continuity with the urban landscape, no? That it presents around the project. In a way, the contest is conformed by that very different condition. There are vertical monuments that stand out in this flat horizontal landscape. There are part of the historical city characterized by the steeped roof. There are part of the socialist housing block from 60s and 70s. So in a way, the building tried to go establish some kind of continuity with this condition. At the end, the project worked with the same identitary element that conform also the neighborhood. This building that is very close to the Philharmony. The element as repetition, verticality, steeped roof, all these elements that conform a certain local architecture of the city are in a way present also in the new Philharmony, no? And transform in a new condition. Again, the plan, this is a very complex project, but it's solved in a very simple and precise way. There is just this crown that conform all the technical and vertical connection. This crown generates an interior open area, some kind of public space, and the two main uses, the two chambers hall, the chamber hall and the Philharmony hall, floating inside of this void. So in this case, the public space go inside of the building. The foyer is conceived like a covered plaza. And then the other important use of the Philharmony, the big Congress hall, essentially is again reflection about a certain type, a certain historical typology of concert hall of the East Europe. A certain idea of ornament that was present in the historical chambers concert hall has been adapted and transformed to use this kind of fragments that are ornament, but at the same time technical element that permit to achieve the best acoustic inside of this room. Again, in the same way, it's a reflection about a certain specific tradition, no? Even in these interior spaces. The project was really the first step of a big urban renovation of an entire part of the city, and for the reason the project then during the night changed its appearance. It tried to express the activity, the interior activity of the project, and tried to make an effort for renovate this area. More recently, we have finished a fine art museum in Switzerland, in Lausanne. This is the first of 3 projects we made recently in Switzerland. It's the first that we have won, but the last that we have built, because it's quite a complex project. The building is there in the sits close to the train station and the railways in the center of the city, in a very big site that is represent and more or less occupy this area here. The competition and the project was about to create a master plan to organize in this huge site the 3 main museums that exist in Lausanne: the Fine Art Museum, the Museum of Design, and the Photography Museum. And this drawing clearly represent our strategy. In the earth of the project, we essentially defined again a long plaza, a long esplanade able to connect it with the plaza in front of the street, and really, and with this element, the effort was to link this new district for art with the city. The 3 museums essentially conform the frame of this new urban space, similar to the project that I presented you before, but in a different scale. So this strategy was really important for the project, represented the first step of the project, clarify the urban condition of the site, and after that the Museum of Fine Art that is here so the concept for the museum arrived in a very simple way. The project sits along the railways, has an inhabited wall, able to conform this new public space and to protect the public space, and also to protect from the railways the collection that is hosted inside of the building. In order to elaborate this strategy, several old buildings has been demolished, but we preserve certain fragments here, there, and also this one, that because our intention was to conform a collection of fragments of the historical building in order to give continuity to the memory of this site. In spite of the dimension, the building sits perfectly into these urban settings, and if we go closer, the building again, it works with the specific condition of this place. There is a certain industrial resonances in this project. We wanted to preserve this atmosphere, this industrial atmosphere that was present in this area. The area essentially was an area for the maintenance of the train before. So the museum is this kind of long inhabited wall that's very abstract in a way, an independent building, but that trying to reuse this kind of industrial atmosphere to conform the new project. From the other side, the building appears as a very neutral background in which stand out a fragment of the pre-existing building. A small fragment in scale, but very important because was an element, was the primary element of a historical hall that was sit in this area, and this small element became the main compositive element of the new project. From the other side, the sequence of this vertical element built in brick permit to work as a brisolaise for, this is the north facade, and at the same time it permits to hide and to create some kind of hermetic facade, but permit a certain permeability in the lower part of the building. So here in the ground floor you can see that essentially the entire ground floor is composed by the public use, the auditorium, restaurant, the foyer, etc., and this kind of vertical element permit to give this kind of abstraction and to the facade, but at the very end what they permit is to achieve this huge permeability between the exterior public space and the interior. The fragment of the pre-existing is the key element because we reuse it in order to conform the new foyer, the main entry of the museum. From one side, this entry is marked through this simple porch that open a void into this rhythm, this vertical rhythm, and when you arrive here, you discover the new foyer. A new foyer, a new architecture that is based on the traces and fragments of the pre-existing building. This beautiful arched window that belongs to the previous building has been transformed and reused as the main compositive element for the new architecture. So again, there is an important space this for us that explains very clearly the approach that I've tried to explain to you. Work with what you found, discover what is specific and identitary in a place, give continuity to this element and transform it into a new scenario. And I think this foyer expressed quite clearly this effort that is present in all our projects. Around the foyer there are vertical connections, some small spaces before to arrive to the gallery that work with light and simple materials. The exhibition in the first floor, the gallery are very informal in a way that permit, and they bring light with the north facade and in between the vertical element. And the upper floor is essentially characterized by the zenith light. Then we will see. But this plan again show the effort that we make in order to design very simple architecture. This kind of huge museum is composed just by 5 core that define the main spacing, that divide in a very pragmatic way, divide the space for the temporary exhibition and the permanent collection. And also so everything is very pragmatic. Everything it's very about the reduction of the element to its minimum. The main feature of this second level is the rooftop that is conformed by a very complex skylight that brings light from the north, and the entire gallery are characterized by this element. This is a very huge gallery, probably one of the biggest in Switzerland, in which the roof it seems that it's just put on it It's a very complex element, but it's in a way it's floating above the gallery in a very light way. These are other spaces of this second level. And another view that expressed quite clearly how this building that apparently it's quite hermetic and abstract, in reality it's very permeable, very open toward the city on the ground level, but also in the first and the second level. No? So, and the project at the end work in kind of contrast between what the perception that you have from outside and what you can find in the interior. The exterior is industrial and hermetic, almost closed, and the interior it's full of light and transparent towards the exterior. More or less in the same year, we also made another fine art museum in a small city, always in Switzerland, in Chur. Chur is a small city close to Zurich. In this case, the project was about an extension of an historical museum. This image represents the historical architecture that hosts the museum. This building has been renovated in 1982 by Peter Zumthor. He had these two winter gardens here, in this very beautiful winter garden. The building is quite fascinating, but at the same time a little bit bizarre, because it's a neo-Palladian villa with an Orientalist decoration that appears here. There are things in the entry, or for example in the interior. This is one of the interior. This is like this because it was originally a villa for a very rich man that import tissue from Egypt. No? So in this case, this condition created a very bizarre and eclectic building. No? The plan, as you can see here, is directly inspired by La Rotonda of Palladio, with a double symmetry that mark in a very clear central void here. No? And the decoration around the building has this kind of Orientalist condition. No? So these two conditions has marked in a way our approach to the project. First, this idea of a kind of absolute architecture. No? This is the original Palladio La Rotonda, conformed by this double symmetry, has started to be important in our reflection. So step by step we start to imagine that the extension of the historical museum should work as a diptych. The same identitary element of the pre-existing building should also conform the new one. No? So the old and new can create this kind of new diptych, no? In a way. So, and here is the plan that display the show how is the new ground floor of the extension. So the geometry is exported for the original building. It is an element that works again with a double symmetry. Everything is combined in just two very simple chords that define a central foyer, a small covered plaza. No? And again, all the product is very reduced and synthesized in this just a few elements. So at the end, the project, I present always the project as a, let's call neo-Palladium building, because the plan, and we will see the plan, are directly related with the historical villa and with this kind of ornament that mark the facade, inspired in this kind of Orientalistic motif. No? Again, is a building that conceptually works with the same element that we have found there, but it transforms into a new architecture. And again, even if it's difficult to notice here, we try to reduce at the maximum the footprint of the building in order to generate this kind of mineral garden around the building, or some kind of basement in which that support the new architecture. In order to generate this public space, we took a very radical decision. The main exhibition area are in the underground, and what's appear outside it's just the public uses. No? In this way, we can adapt the scale of the building to the historical building and conform the new gallery in a most general area. The foyer directly related with historical building, the main stairs that go down in concrete, and then we arrive in the level of the permanent gallery. Here, this plan shows in a very quite precise way this sequence, the composition of the plan is composed by a sequence of rooms following this idea of aggregation that is present in many Palladium buildings. So it's quite the relationship with the historical building here. It's quite clear in a way. Some images of these rooms. And the lower level dedicated to temporary exhibition is essentially an open plan characterized by just the two core, and the rest is a free space for art. And these are some images of this level. This kind of bas relief that conform this kind of ornament, but at the end is not an ornament because it's something that permits to hide all the technical elements that appears in the facade, is composed by prefab concrete element. You can see in this detail that it's carved and conform this kind of square shaped, that conform this a vibrant surface. The entire facade, the concrete facade, is working in this way. So sometimes it's just a mass. Sometimes he hide windows and etc. And we use the same motif also to mark the delivery door. That is the unique element that creates a dissonance inside of this double symmetry that can organize the entire project. And this element is quite relevant because in order to reduce the footprint, in order to create the plinth, in order to give the right scale of the building, we took a quite radical decision, and it was that the foyer is the foyer, but at the same time is the delivery area for the museum. So this element is at the very end, the element that permits that the entire project works in a very good way. So for the reason we market this special element into the project. The last project, the most recent project that we have finished is Dance Academy in Zurich, in Switzerland. It's a small project that sits along the Limmat River in a very beautiful and fascinating area. It's an area that was an industrial area, but during the last day there is a huge changement. So it's a very a context full of different buildings, industrial building mixing with new residential building, and etc. The project essentially tried to establish a link with this, with all the infrastructure that around of the building, and it is considered as a new infrastructure really. a long porch that sits along the river that create a new topography and is public accessible in all the level, on the top, in the middle area, and in the new promenade along the river. Here in the model you can see that in this case the project, it doesn't define an object, but it defines a topography. Our intention was really to generate a new public space along the river, permit the citizen to move again along the river, but also in this level and in the upper level, and give again the prominence to the historical building that are sit in this way. Here you can see how the building is inserted with this element that represents an historical bath in wood, very, very beautiful. Here there is a passerelle, around here there is another bridge, metallic infrastructure, etc. That market in a way. All these kind of infrastructure are market also the form and the shape of the building. In this early drawing, you can see the relationship, the attempt in order to establish some kind of relationship with bridges and this infrastructure that mark the site, and also the effort in order to create a building that is just topography, avoiding to achieve too much prominence in respect with the historical building, So the building at the end is just a plinth, above it sits the other residential building. The effort of the project was really about to reactivate this area, to recreate a new promenade along the river. For the reason, we moved the entry to the Dance and the Academy from the upper street to this new level, forcing the people to go down, arrive to the river, and enter into the new foyer that it's located in this area. The effort again was really about to make a simple building able to create a new part of the city. There is one specific thing for this project that is really important. Everything is built in concrete. With insulated concrete, so there's no layers of insulation. It's just mass in concrete, and the frame and the carpentry, the frame are just connected with the concrete structure. This is an effort in order to really to work just with structure, to reduce architecture to structure and nothing else. So this detail is conform the entire project. It is like this in order to avoid thermal bridges, and is the element that organized and absolutely the entire project. This is a mock-up we made of this special insulated concrete. And then the other important thing is that after many years of study, we have been able to avoid the using of louvers in order to protect the solar radiation. This is a really important thing in Switzerland. And we proposed to the authority to use vegetation as a tool to control the solar radiation. So we study with engineers and agronomers, other people, which kind of leaf and flower we should use, and we try to plant this element in this in between of the column. This apparently simple system is the first time that a building use the vegetation as a technical element to control the solar radiation, and in this way the project is really at the avant-garde in a way. The idea is that in the future the project step by step will be integrated with the nature that in the trees that appears in front, towards the vegetation that essentially will grow up in the middle of the rhythm of the windows. Also, the form, this triangular form, permit to control the solar, the lighting, more light in the lower part, less light in the top of the facade, but at the same time is a form that makes sense from a structural point of view, because it permits to work with this concrete that doesn't have a lot of mechanical resistance. So in this way we avoid to have to work with this material essentially. The section very pragmatic, create this stepped building, the foyer, the main dance studio. The upper floor is just a garden that integrate the building into the surrounding. Here you can start to see the bridge that's in front, silos, in all industrial buildings, and etc. The level of the terrace, a new promenade along the river, the interior space, always made in concrete, and the lower level with the foyer that is an extension of the public space of the promenade into the building. So this is the new main facade of the building, this new promenade created with the sequence of this special, a continuous and repetition of the same element. And the foyer, it's quite a very beautiful space, facing south. The lights arrive into the building, filtering through the vegetation, everything in concrete, and it is really an extension of the public life into the building. And this is the main dance studio that takes like from the terrace. No? Very simple building that work with concrete and with the technicals element. So more or less these are the main projects that we have built during the last years, or since we started the office. And after working for several years here in Spain and Europe, now the office is facing two very important new challenges. So we started recently to work in US, especially with two new important projects for us related with culture and art. This is the first, the very first time that I present this project, and these are the projects that will mark the future of the office for the next year. So they are still confidential, so I cannot show you many things, but I would just to finalize this presentation with a general comment about it. In Miami, we will work for an artist residency into an industrial neighborhood, and what we will try to do will be to create a new civic building able to reconvert this kind of industrial neighborhood, creating an inside of a building a new kind of oasis for the artist life. And the other project that will be for us really important, and it will and probably it will mark the next 10 years of the office, will be the main transformation of the Art Institute in Chicago. After a long selective process, our office has been selected to address a major renovation for the entire museum. The Art Institute is the second largest museum in US. It's a museum composed by many different buildings from different periods, with the original one, the Palladium Building, that was built for the World Fair. And then there are other different buildings. The last one has been the extension by Renzo Piano 10 years ago. So, and our project would really try to not just create an extension, but renovate the entire campus to address and to reconfirm the connectivity between the building, new extension, demolition, etc., in order to give clarity and give coherence to all these different buildings. There is the museum is characterized by the train that cross the campus. The campus is quite big. It takes this kind of 4 blocks of the downtown of Chicago, and it sits in the middle of the garden. So our project will be really about a general reorganization of the campus. The main point will be to trying to transform this kind of inward-facing museum into an extroverted museum, able to recuperate the civic and public condition that it is necessary for this kind of project. And essentially the project will be based in 4 main strategies that every strategy will try to reestablish a missed link, reestablish a direct connection with the city, with the train, with the gardens, and with the lake. And hopefully in a few years we will have the opportunity to start with the work, and maybe in the next presentation I will have the opportunity also to present this new project. So, thank you.
Thank you, Fabrizio, for that beautiful presentation of your work and for concluding on some brief glimpses into the future. It's great to see you again presenting your work after 3 years. I'm very pleased that you've finally been able to present your work in Australia. Thank you. Let's begin our dialogue. You described in the work of Barozzi Veiga the specific and the autonomous, the quest for public space and the formal reduction to the essence of elements and spaces. I would describe the works as intelligent interventions. Congratulations. For me, the projects contain the impressive duality of the extremely powerful and incredibly sensitive. The materiality also adds to this, the way you describe the concrete and those brick blade walls. Would you like to elaborate a little on these aspects of the work?
Thanks, Stephen, for the question. And you know, the materiality is another element that is able to intensify the relationship with a specific context. It's another way to try to create this sensitive and delicate and intimate link with the context. So every project is a very unique project. It's and every project asks for maybe a special material. So for the reason we during the last year we worked with different kind of material, because we want to try to reinforce this connection with the context. For example, in Lausanne we use the brick because it has this kind of simple basic material related with this kind of industrial atmosphere that exists in that place. Or, for example, in the Philharmonic, we use a gold leaf, a synthetic gold leaf material that is related with a tradition of the classical concert hall. So every project asks for a different material, and the material identify the specific link with a context.
Thank you. The dialogue you've continued to explore between the old and the new, this has evolved over time. Can you tell us more about how this idea has matured over the years?
Yeah, the relationship between the pre-existing building and new building is part of our story in a way. When we started the office in 2004, we participated in several competitions, different competitions, and in many cases the projects were about extension, transformation, or reuse pre-existing building. So since the beginning, we started to reflect about how to deal with the existing condition, with all building in this case, especially also because many of projects were based in Italy and Spain, in kind of very sensitive and historical context. So this is a general theme that is present since the beginning of the office until the very recent project. We try to interpret this challenge, giving continuity to the pre-existing building. So we understand an architecture not only as an isolated building, but as an object that it's just a part of a bigger things that is the city. So we always try to work in continuity with something, discovering new steps for a story, and giving new perspective to a story. I think in all our projects related with pre-existing building, we always work in this way, try to discover a project that is able to give continuity to something, but discovering also a new possibilities. Probably the first project we did were more contextualist in a way. During the recent year, we tried to make the project a little bit more independent from the pre-existing building or for the contextual condition. These are maybe a subtle difference that appears in the last project, with respect the old one.
You mentioned competitions, and you've described these projects as outcomes of serious architectural competitions. Tell us how you've been able to build and sustain a practice on competitions.
Yeah, when we started, as I mentioned, so we started the office in 2004. We arrived to Barcelona, but neither Alberto nor me are from Barcelona. So we arrived here and we decided to open our office. At that time, we didn't have a client or didn't have the typical small project that many architects has to start their career. So we founded the competition as a tools to start our careers. So and essentially we start to participate in competition and in Spain, but also around Europe. At that time, especially in Spain, the activities for the competition was quite important. There were a lot of competition in which young architects could participate. And yeah, essentially, we started our office in this way. We won several competitions. Some of them has been stopped after a few years. Some other, the project that I presented, the ROA, the building for ROA and Águilas, they continue. So they give us the possibility to move on with the office. We still work a lot with competition, not only in Europe. Now, for example, we are developing a competition in Asia, in China, and also in US. So now we work in a more larger scale, and also during the last year we started to have also a few private clients. And that is something quite new for us because since the beginning we work with public projects. Now we have the opportunity also to work with private clients, developing houses and and residential scheme. That is something that probably we really want to do, because it's something that maybe was missed in our first year of the office. No? So now we are working in both way, competition and private client. This is quite a difficult strategy, continues to work just with competition, but at the same time, intellectually is something very fascinating now, because every project is a challenge, is something that permit to create some kind of story, some kind of for the office, and we it is economically is difficult, but we really enjoyed working in this way.
No, I think that's very obvious. You touched upon clients, and so my next question relates to that. That in the end, each competition scheme has been for very different clients that you initially don't know. So how do you describe your projects to these clients, and what kind of dialogue do you create with them to bring your competition-winning scheme to a successful reality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every project is really a different story. It's a kind of unique experience, no? Because every client is slightly different in a way, you know. But in our case, there is a common condition that many of the projects that I presented are related with culture. So in general, our clients has been and very sensitive about architecture, about the what means to create architecture and good building. So in this sense, we have been quite lucky, because we had client very sensitive about the project, and we have been able to establish with them a quite deep dialogue. Especially, for example, for the project that we have made in Switzerland along the last 10 years, we had a very continuous and deep dialogue with the client about the program, about the materiality of the building, about the cost of the building, for sure. And many important decision has been also the result of a shared dialogue and a shared shared dialogue, and this, for one side, is permit to achieve a project that is really able to fulfill all the needs that the client need and want, but at the same time, it's also quite. Sometimes the architect has to renew some things that the client didn't have to want. But in general, and then I think so. The client more or less have been the same condition. What is very different is to work in different countries. This is the main difference, because every country has its own specificity, its own law, its own way of work. And I think this is the most difficult things to discover at the beginning when we start, for example, now in US, which is the methodology, how is the relationship with the authorities and the client, etc., etc. So essentially, in every project we start from zero. It's from scratch, no? And this is fascinating, but at the same time, it's quite difficult at the same time.
Very interesting times, I'm sure. Now, Brickworks have asked some of our online audience to ask questions, and they've selected one, and this one comes from Chloe Middleton of Alcorn Middleton Architecture Office in Brisbane. And she asks, you speak about architecture as an autonomous entity, and I deeply, deeply agree with this value. But what do you think or say to clients when they expect an architectural form to be integrated or in harmony with the landscape, context, and surroundings?
Yeah, this is this question marked exactly the point, no? So I said that our work is based in a paradox, in a dichotomy. From one side, we are conscious that the architecture is an object, has its own autonomy, but at the same time is something that should be part of a bigger ensemble, should be part of a context, should be part of the city, and should be in continuity, work in continuity with something, as I mentioned in another question. So I think, I don't know, it's kind of a miracle when you are able to give independency and autonomy to an object, but at the same time to establish a natural continuity with the context. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes you see a building that is belong to a context. It is, let's say, in harmony or integrated in a context because there are certain identitary character that are shared with the bigger scale or with the context or with the cities. So the base of the project, the ingredient of the project are the same in a way. So, but at the same time, it's there is something different. There is the building tells a new story. And this is exactly the inside of this dichotomy is where is based our work. So sometimes this beautiful balance between these two conditions happens, and probably when this happens, we are able to achieve our best projects.
Thank you. Before we close, can you please reveal a little about how you work with your partner and how you work with your studio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the studio we are about 20 persons, more or less. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. It depends of the period. And Alberto and me, we work essentially together. We share the same office since 15 years ago. And at the beginning, we didn't have a very specific role. We shared almost everything since the competition phase until the construction and so on, because maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the office was a little bit small and we had the opportunity to share everything. During the last year, our role has been a little bit more specialized. Now, Alberto is a little bit more in charge about the execution phase and the construction phase. He followed the development of the project, the definition of all the details and the site supervision. So he followed all this. It's more involved in this area. And probably I'm a little bit more involved in the conceptual phases and the design development, in the first phases of the project or the competition, for example. But this division is not so clear in a way, because our way of work is really about a continuous dialogue between us. Alberto or me, we propose something and the other sometimes is agreed with the proposal, sometimes not. So it's a continuous really discussion, and when we found a common point, so we see that probably this is a good thing for a project. So more or less we have this kind of division, but there's no red line. It's a little bit. It depends on the project. It depends on many conditions. So because we believe that it's important to have a very broad vision since the beginning of a project. Now you can develop a competition if you have in mind also how you can build something or how will be the materiality of this building. So since also if you want to sketch something very basic at the beginning for a competition, it is important to have a long vision of what can happen in the next phases. So for this reason, it's important that we share all the information we have and all the ideas in order to have a more coherent vision for our project.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I think from where we sit, it seems like you've been having a very successful dialogue together, and we wish you much success for the future projects, and we look forward to seeing what happens with you in the future. I think this is a good point to end on. I'd like to thank you, Fabrizio. It's been wonderful that we've been able to connect finally, and it's been a great evening. Thank you for your presentation and for your dialogue at the end. On behalf of Brickworks, I once again thank you for taking the time to share your work and thoughts with our audience in Australia, and perhaps even in other parts of the world tuning in. Please join me in thanking Fabrizio, everybody. Thank you. And for everybody watching, thank you for staying online and participating in this new venture by Brickworks. Please keep an eye out for the launch that was mentioned earlier, and keep an eye on the website for future events. Thank you all for viewing. Good night.